everybody. My name is Mars. You can call me MG if you would like. It is 9:15 p.m. on September 30th, and I am starting this vlog this late at night with this horrible lighting because I am scared. This is the vlog for the Honeybee Society book club. That is my book club that I've just started, where we read a different dark academia book every 2 months. So the very first pick is for September and October of this year, 2025, and that book is the very first dark academia book to exist, The Secret History. I did not realize this book was as long as it is. I just opened my ebook on Libby, and I have the font size set literally one singular notch above the standard size, and that has made my ebook 1,200 pages. Why? Why is that happening? This happened to me literally last week when I picked out Wild Reverence, the newest Rebecca Ross book, and it was like 1,062 pages. This is, I don't remember exactly. I think it's also like 1,262 or 64? 60 something. I don't know. But yeah, I'm terrified. That's so long. I was not expecting that. I only have 12 days left on this hold because I checked it out 2 days ago, thinking that I would finish the book I was reading, The Fellowship of the Ring, earlier than I did. I only finished that a couple of hours ago. And so I'm like, okay, you know what, we'll take the evening off and I will start The Secret History in the morning. No, I opened that ebook and I got scared, and so here I am starting this vlog so that I can start reading that. I think the plan is I'm going to read 60 whatever pages today, or like until the end of a break in like the scene or the chapter or whatever, like a good stopping point. Doesn't have to exactly be that 60 whatever pages. And then for the next 12 days, because it is due at, I believe, 1 p.m. on October 12th, I will read 100 pages, hopefully a little bit more than 100 pages, so that I'm not cutting it close, because I did that for The Fellowship of the Ring. I had the audiobook, and I returned it 3 hours before it was due. I don't want to do that again, so hopefully I'll read a little bit more than 100 pages for each day, and I will finish sooner than the 12th, but my goal is 100 pages at least. And I plan on giving you updates after every chapter. There aren't a ton of chapters. I think there's less than 10 chapters in this book, so that means they're going to be very long, which I am not a fan of. I am a short chapter girly, but it's fine. I did this to myself. So I will update you after each chapter and be spoilery about it because I want to give all of my thoughts. This is my book club's book. Might as well be spoilery about it. And yeah, I think that's all I've got to say. I did see that the epilogue is only like 20 or so pages, so I'll be back here probably again in a little bit. Like, I'll read that right now and then update you, and then try and read a little bit more before bed. Oh boy, what am I getting myself into? Okay, it has only been a few minutes, but I'm back already. I was wrong about a few things in that last clip. First of all, I think I said epilogue. I meant prologue. The prologue is the thing that's at the beginning of the book. Obviously, I'm going to read that first. The prologue started on page 20. It was not 20 pages long. It started on page 20 in my ebook and was only 4 pages long. So I read that very quickly, and we are given this introduction to what's going to happen and what technically has already happened, I guess. I don't know. It's a book. All things kind of happen at the same time because it all exists. That feels existential. I'm not going to get into that. We have our narrator. Don't know their name yet. His name, I think the main character is a guy, but it is told in the first person point of view, and we learn that this takes place in Vermont, and this guy got embroiled in this scenario that resulted in this death of this character named Bunny, and that's pretty much all we know. The character is talking about how it took a while for the police and the FBI that was involved in all this to find Bunny's body, not because this character and the other people involved purposefully hid the body, but just because of different circumstances out of their control that happened, and now he's like obsessed with this whole situation and all of the events leading up to that death, and he calls it the only story he'll ever be able to tell. And I guess that's the story that we're going to be getting. The next chapter, the very first chapter, is 88 pages, which is long. So I will see you on the other side of it. Good morning, friends. It is 8 a.m. on October 1st, and I'm here to let you know that I read chapter 1 last night before bed, but then it was quite late, and I didn't feel like turning my camera on to record an update. I just went right to bed. So here I am. Chapter 1 was a lot of setup, as you can imagine, for chapter 1. We meet our main character, Richard. His name is John, but he goes by his middle name, Richard. Sure. And basically, he hates his home life. That's a bus going by, I apologize. He hates his home life, his dad's always angry, his mom kind of ignores him, which, like, seems not terrible, but he, like, laments about how he has the worst childhood ever or whatever. He doesn't have very many friends. He goes to college for a few years to study being a doctor, I think is his initial like career path, but then he ends up taking this Greek class, ancient Greek, because it's the only thing that meets in the afternoon for filling whatever elective he needs to fulfill, and he ends up having a really good time, and then he wants to switch his major to study literature, and his parents are like, nah, don't really care, whatever. He ends up transferring to a school in Vermont. He is from California. He goes all the way across the country to, I think it's called Hampton College, and he goes there to study literature, and it is there that he meets Julian Morrow, who is a professor, and a very strange one at that. He doesn't take a salary. Any money that the school tries to give him, he donates right back. He takes on a very few select students every year, and he demands that any students he teaches, become his, I don't know what the word is in that way, but like he wants to be their counselor. And he also says that they can only take classes from him unless he tells them to take other classes. So he is subscribing to this idea that a student should only have one academic mentor, basically. And through a series of events, our main character becomes a student of this professor, and he still takes French with a different professor, the guy who was his original counselor, actually, but everything else he transfers out of his classes to join Julian Morrow's classes. He meets the other 5 students that Morrow is teaching at this point in time. We've got Henry, who is very, like, grumpy and standoffish. He immediately is like, I don't think I like, what's his name, Richard. I'm gonna try and catch him in a lie or something like that, make a fool out of him, basically. He's very, like, I don't want to be friends kind of guy. We have Bunny, who, if you remember from the prologue, this is a spoilery book. I mean, this isn't a super big spoiler. It might be in the blurb, actually. But Bunny's the one who dies, eventually. And, I don't know if it's that aspect, or the fact that his name is an animal, or his personality, but he gives very big Piggy from Lord of the Flies vibes. At least that's what I'm getting right now. So that's him. He's a little bit like the comic relief character, I feel, but he is much more jovial. He's kind of like the friendliest of the group, inviting Richard out to dinner and stuff like that. Then we have Francis, whose only personality trait so far seems to be that Richard thinks he's gay. Sure. And then we have the twins, Charles and Camilla, and they are part of the group, but also kind of like their own unit unto themselves. And really all we know about them is that they are very beautiful. Sure. So we've got this group, and we attend one singular class with Julian. We get to see what they're actually studying, and they are introduced to the concept of the Bacchanalia, which they don't use that term in this first chapter, I don't think, but I know that that is a central theme of this book. And all 6 students now seem to be quite intrigued by this concept, so you can see where things might be heading. But yeah, I am not obsessed. The writing style is very flowery, I will say, very lengthy and drawn out. And don't get me wrong, I love some flowery language. I love a long sentence, but this might be a little bit too far. Um, yeah, I will be continuing on, and I will see you when I finish chapter 2. Hello, friends. It is 9:30 a.m. on October 2nd, and I have just finished reading the second chapter of The Secret History. It has been a very cold morning. You see, I've got my sweatshirt on, I've got a blanket, and I've just been so cold. And I was going to write this morning, but my Google Docs is just acting up. I thought it was the Wi-Fi, but my boyfriend's not having any problems, so it's definitely just me having issues. But I couldn't write, so I'm like, I might as well read and get ahead on this. So I did, in fact, finish chapter 2. And this one is more setup, and we see Richard kind of becoming part of the group more and interacting with all of the other students of the same professor. And we see how he's got like a different relationship dynamic with each of them, and we see a little bit of their dynamics with each other. But we also get this kind of like outsider feeling where Richard knows that they all still do things without him, and he's not like fully involved in this group. And he's like, it kind of hurts, but also like, I get it. And so we see all of that. There's a lot of like retrospective comments. Is that the word I want to use? I don't know, we're going with it. Where he's like, as the narrator, he's like, of course I didn't know at that moment what would come to pass or whatever, like thinking about what's going to happen in the future. Or the end of the chapter is he hears Bunny laughing, and he's like, that laugh still haunts me to this day. And so it kind of like puts distance between the moment and the story, if that makes sense. And I don't know how I feel about it. I think I just need to get a little bit more used to that being the writing style, but it's very much told in that way. There is one moment that I think is very stupid. He, Richard, is taking a walk with Camilla down by this lake. They're all staying at Francis's aunt's house, and there's a lake, and they're taking a walk, and she's barefoot, and she steps on a piece of glass. And the way it's described is that it is a more than 3-inch long piece of green glass stuck in the bottom of her foot, and that blood is spurting out as if it had severed an artery. And I'm like, that's very serious. And you know what they do? They move her 20 feet into the yard so that they're not like on the edge of the lake anymore, lay her in the grass, and yank the piece of glass out and wrap her foot up. You don't want to like leave that in until you get to the hospital, maybe, to prevent the blood from spurting out? Because like the glass is wedged in her foot and it's still saying that blood is spraying everywhere. Like that is kind of insane. And then literally the next page, they're like, Camilla was fine. They went to the doctor and she got a couple of stitches, and then she was around walking on them. Why was she walking on her stitches? Bizarre. We also did see some like reversals of expectations with some of the characters. So in the first chapter, Bunny is set up to be this really like cool guy, kind of like chill, but he gets very intense at a couple of points in this chapter. We also see his raging homophobia. For some reason, that is a thing. Very off-putting. Don't like that. And then we also have Henry, who at first is very like cold and distant and grumpy, and we see a few moments of him being like tender and caring in this chapter, and I thought that was pretty cool. So yeah, we are trucking along. Still have not really had any major events happen, but I assume we'll get there soon, considering I'm about 20% in, almost 20%. So yeah, we should be nearing some sort of incident, I hope. Hello, friends. It is still October 2nd, but now it is 9 p.m., and I've just finished chapter 3. And what a chapter to read on today, this weirdly cold day. It has not been cold or even like fall weather, really, for these past few weeks that you would expect it to start rolling in. We've had like a couple of milder days, but today it did hit like 70, but that was when I was at work. And anytime I haven't been at work, it's just been so cold. I think it's like 50 degrees right now. And this chapter takes place at the end of the fall semester and over the course of the winter break. And it's just so cold, and it was making me feel more cold as I was reading it, even though I was already cold in real life to begin with. Wild. Anyway, we get a lot of Richard on his own here because all of his new friends are off doing things, and he ends up staying in town at this really awful place because he doesn't want to go back to his parents' house for the break. And the break for the school is from halfway through December all the way to halfway through February. So 2 whole months. And he's staying in this place with no heating and a hole in the roof, and he ends up almost dying. He gets like hypothermia, and at one point he like half passes out and cuts a big gash in his head on a payphone, and he ends up getting saved by Henry, who is back and has been like looking for him. There's a lot of like homoerotic undertones between Richard and Henry, which is interesting. Yeah, Henry saves his life, basically taking him to the hospital, and then is like, I'm not letting you go back to that place where you got hypothermia. You're gonna stay in my apartment. So they stay together for a few weeks, and then everyone else like filters back in and stops by. Richard overhears some things, so we're getting like inklings of a mystery and a plot, but for the most part, it's all vibes. And I'm not hating it, I'm just not particularly invested. Like, it's fine. I'm gonna keep reading it, even if it wasn't for this vlog and for my book club. I'd probably keep reading it. Like, I'm interested enough, but I'm not like super invested, you know? But I am a quarter of the way through now. I think I was like 26% according to Libby, so making great headway. I was very intimidated by that page number on my ebook, but it does go by fast, even though it is quite rambly at times, and these sentences are very wordy. Apparently everyone wants to drive past my house at this time of night, so I am going to go while I still can and call it for this update. I'm gonna stay up a little bit late tonight because it is the premiere of the new Critical Role campaign, episode 1. I am not going to stay up for the whole thing because being on the East Coast means that it starts at 10 p.m. for me, and I do have work again tomorrow. Again, I don't have to be at work until 11, but I still don't want to stay up super late. So I'm going to watch just a little bit, but I do have an hour until that starts, so I'll probably get a little bit more reading done. And I will see you when I have finished chapter 4. Hello, friends. It is just past 7 p.m. on October 4th, and I've just finished chapter 4 of The Secret History. So, this chapter, Richard is like piecing together little secrets of what all of the other members of this little cohort have been doing, but mostly Henry. And he figures out that they have this like plan, or at least 4 of them have this plan to go to Argentina, and he's like, that's weird, but doesn't really do anything with that information. And then the classes start back up. It's like mid to late February at this point. Classes start back up, and after not seeing anybody other than Bunny and Julian for like a week, he finally sees the others, and everything kind of seems normal. But then at one point, Henry shows up at his room and is like, let's go for a drive. And Henry basically explains this whole thing to him, mostly unprompted. He's like, I know we were gonna go to Argentina. I bet you're wondering why we didn't. And Richard is like, yeah, I guess I am. And Henry's explaining first why they wanted to go to Argentina. Well, no, he explains that they ended up not going because they didn't have the money. And then he's like, do you want to know why we were gonna go in the first place? And Richard is like, well, it has to be something big. Did you like kill someone? And then Henry's like, yeah, and like so flippant about it. He's like, it was an accident, but yeah. So the previous semester, when they learned about the Bacchanalia, they meaning the other 5 students outside of Richard, who was still like kind of an outsider at that point, the 5 of them decided that they were going to try and have this Bacchanalia. And they were doing a lot of things with Richard around. Like, there were several weekends where they went to stay at Francis's aunt's house in the country, and they were doing a lot of things there, like behind Richard's back. And Henry's like, yeah, you almost caught us several times. I'm like, why would you just not do it then? Like, just do it when he's not around if you didn't want to be caught. I don't know. And they like didn't want to include him because they thought he would think they were weird. I don't know. But the 5 of them were like doing all this stuff trying to induce this Bacchanalia and see God or whatever, completely lose themselves. I don't know. They start to realize they're getting close, but Henry is like, Bunny's gonna ruin this for us. We gotta cut Bunny out. So then the 4 that are left, Henry, Camilla, Charles, and Francis, decide to do this one last time on their own to figure out how to have a Bacchanalia like they did in ancient Greece. And they end up inducing psychosis, basically, by starving themselves, not sleeping for days on end, and taking this random concoction of drugs and alcohol and poisons over the course of however long that they were not eating or sleeping. And Henry's like, yeah, we did it. We had a Bacchanalia. And Richard's like, I don't know what you mean by that. And Henry's like, yeah, I can't really explain it better than that. Like, you had to be there to understand. Okay, sure. But in this induced psychosis, they end up killing someone. They don't know exactly how it happened. Henry thinks he did it. Charles thinks that he was the one who did it. And, like, all this stuff happens, and they are, like, freaking out. And they're like, yeah, we gotta flee the country. But then they don't have enough money to do that. So they don't. And Henry's just explaining all of this to Richard. And Richard, like, he didn't go to Henry to demand answers about any of this. Henry was just like, I bet you're curious about this. And Richard was like, yeah, I guess I am. And it just kind of dumb. Like, this feels so stupid. But it's written in such a pretentious way that makes it feel stupider than it actually is. If it was written in a way that, like, built up more tension and drama, I feel like I would be more involved in it. But it feels like, okay, I don't want to offend people with this metaphor or whatever, but it's like when you go to college and you meet that guy who is a film major, and he's like, what do you mean you haven't seen this silent film from France from 1947 that, like, when, like, they lost all the copies except for one in a fire in the 80s or whatever, like, that kind of pretension. And I'm, like, so kind of over it, honestly. But I will read on, and maybe it'll get better, I don't know. But my prediction for the rest of this book is that the 4 of them decide to have another Bacchanalia, and that Richard is involved this time, and that's how Bunny dies. We'll see. Hello, friends. It is the afternoon of October 5th, and I've just finished chapter 5. I'm so bored of this book. First of all, this chapter over 200 pages long in my ebook pages, which admittedly are like the chapters are going to be longer than in the standard ebook because I do have it set a notch higher on the font size. Anyway, I've just reached 50% of the book, and it's so boring. It's like nothing's happening. This chapter started off with more explaining of what happened. Last chapter it was all Henry explaining about like the Bacchanalia and how they killed a man. And then at the start of this chapter, Charles came in and he's like, "Oh yeah, Bunny's known about it since like a week after it happened and he's been holding it over our heads and like here's all the stuff that happened that you like were too oblivious to see, Richard." And it's like just going over all of the things that had happened in the past month that Richard either wasn't there for or didn't notice anything weird about. And then we get some scenes that like take place at that moment of just Bunny taking advantage of them and like holding this info over their heads. And it's just so much and for no reason. And Richard is just not doing anything. He's the lamest main character I've ever read. He's just doing nothing. Like, bro, come on. What else? We find out that Julian knows about this and he's just like, huh, okay. Like, does not care. Sure. Um, yeah, not a lot happens. There's like the plans to kill Bunny, and they like throw out some ideas and decide like no, that won't work, and then they come to the conclusion that they're going to go to this ravine that Bunny walks by sometimes and push him in. And the last thing that happened right at the end of the chapter was them waiting for him, and Bunny walks up. So I'm so over this, and I'm only halfway through. The last 3 chapters make up half of the book, so it's gonna be 3 incredibly long chapters, and I'm not looking forward to it. It's not like bad, it's just boring. There's this one quirk that I've noticed that happened many times in this chapter. I don't know if it happened in earlier chapters. If it did, I didn't notice it until now. But there's just a lot of scene breaks in the most random places. Like, everyone will be talking, someone will ask a question, there will be a scene break, then someone will answer the question, then there will be another scene break, and then the conversation will go on. That's happened so many times. It's so bizarre. I don't understand that choice in writing style. But yeah, I am going to continue reading and push on because, like I said, it's not bad. It's just boring, and I kind of want to see how it all plays out and say that I've finally read this book. But yeah, it's not gonna get a very high rating, I don't think. But I want to finish it up so that I can move on and read other books. So I will see you at the end of chapter 6. Hello, friends. It is just past 8 p.m. on Monday, and I have finished chapter 6. We don't get to see the death, the murder. We don't get to see it on page. What? So, the last chapter, chapter 5, which was the end of part 1, ends with Bunny approaching the group on the top of this, like, ravine thing where he goes for this walk all the time. And then the next chapter, the start of the next one, it's this part 2, it just skips ahead. And the narrator is like, oh, I remember in the weeks that followed, like, blah, 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 blah. We don't get to see the moment actually happen. That feels like a ripoff. I'm not gonna lie. I'm just so ready to be done with this book, you guys. This chapter was a lot of the, like, follow up and the search for Bunny because they know he's dead, these students, but no one else does. They just think he's gone missing, and so there's this like huge search. Oh, excuse me. I am so tired. This huge search going on. The FBI comes in because this guy, actually the guy who repairs Henry's car, he's like making some big claims or whatever, and so the FBI gets involved. I don't know. And we see all of this play out over hundreds of pages. did not need to be that long. And it ends this chapter with Bunny's body being found in the ravine by some girl walking her dog. And it's after all of this big rainstorms coming through that cleared out all of the snow that had hidden his body. So, yeah, there's only 2 chapters left and the epilogue, but I'm somehow only 68% through. I feel like nothing has really happened and nothing's going to happen. Like, I don't know. This book is a whole lot of absolutely nothing. And I'm so ready for it to be done. I really want to finish it. But like I said, I'm only 68% through. I have hundreds of pages left. Why? Anyway, 2 chapters and the epilogue. I will give you my updates as per usual because I am sticking this through. Okay, friends, it has been a little over 2 hours, and I've just finished the next chapter of The Secret History, and I feel like I don't have anything new to tell you. I'm still just so bored of this book. It's starting to get on my nerves. Like, at first, I was just like, yeah, this is fine, this is whatever, it's not particularly bad, but the more I read, the less I'm enjoying it. So close to the end. I'm like 77% through now. This chapter was only about 100 pages, but the next one is almost 300. I don't know. I'm going to try and finish this tomorrow. I don't know if I can. It's the last chapter and then the epilogue. We'll see, but this chapter was the lead up to Bunny's funeral and then the funeral itself. And this is where Richard finally has the thought, like, maybe I should feel guilty about partaking in this murder. You think? What? There's nothing happening. I don't like any of these characters. I am grateful to this book for spawning the aesthetic of dark academia because, as we know, I love dark academia. It's why I started this book club, among many other things that I've done, like publishing some dark academia books. But, like, this just isn't good, man. I don't know what else to say. It's just not good. But I'm going to stick it through to the end, and I will see you hopefully tomorrow with my penultimate update, and then eventually my final update. So, yeah, right now I need to go to sleep. This is usually about the time that I'm in bed, but my boyfriend went out on a bike ride and he still is not home. He should be home soon, so only staying up a little bit later than I normally do, but like, I'm getting very tired. Yeah, I will see you hopefully tomorrow, but literally whenever. Hello, friends. It is 8 something p.m. on the 7th, Tuesday, and I have finished chapter 8. I finished the last chapter. Still the epilogue to go, but I finished the last chapter of The Secret History. And this one was a whole lot more nothing. It is basically just the group fracturing in the aftermath of everything. Specifically, there is tension between Henry and Charles, which, again, our main character, not really doing anything. He is the blandest protagonist I've ever had the misfortune of reading. He does nothing. But there's, like, twists that aren't really twists. This is where we get the incest that I knew was coming between the twins. There's also, like, the reveal that Henry is pretty much just a psychopath, which, like, obviously, and it's like, oh, he's been manipulating us all along, like, yeah, duh. Julian, also, he has barely been in this book, and they're trying to make him out to be this, like, huge influence, but, like, we never see that on page, but he finds out about the fact that Bunny was murdered because he gets a letter that, this is like weeks after the funeral, he gets a letter that had been put in a different professor's mailbox, but that professor was on sabbatical, and that professor's kid came to collect the mail and was like, oh, this was in the wrong mailbox, and gave it to Julian. And the letter is from Bunny, written like the night before he died, and it's all like paranoia. and everything, and talking about how Henry's going to kill me, which he does, and like, all Julian does is leave. He doesn't give any reasoning for leaving, he just dips and tells the school, like, hey, peace out, I'm not gonna be back probably ever. And that's it. Sure, that plot point does absolutely nothing for the story. But yeah, tensions are rising between Henry and Charles because they are both in love with Camilla. And it just ends up in this whole big confrontation. Right at the end of the chapter, Charles is drunk out of his mind, which he is for most of the book, but he like had this whole stint in the hospital because he had this like infection happening, and so he's been on all of these different drugs as well as being drunk all the time, so he's losing his mind, and he confronts everyone else with a gun, and the gun ends up going off. Richard, our main dude, he gets shot, but no one is paying any attention to him. And then people at this hotel where this confrontation is happening are like, hey, we heard gunshots, what's happening in there? And then Henry kills himself. That's the end of the last chapter. I do still have the epilogue to read. It is 40 pages long, so it should not take me forever to read. It should be like before 9 p.m. So I'm going to buckle in and get that read and come back and finish this vlog for you because I am so over it. I knew I wasn't gonna like this book. There's a reason why I haven't read it. And I was always telling myself, like, oh, like, I'll read it eventually. And then I just kept putting it off because I knew it was not going to be for me as much as I love Dark Academia. And you know what? I don't like this book and I shouldn't have read it, but I am still glad that it was the first pick for my book club. So, yeah, tiny little win among the awfulness that is this book is that it does fit for the book club and it makes sense to be the first one. Anyway, like I said, I'm going to go read that epilogue real quick and come back and finish out this vlog for you guys. Okay, it is 8:45. I have finished the epilogue of The Secret History, and honestly, I don't even want to tell you what happens because it doesn't matter. Like, it's so dumb. Basically, Richard graduates from school, none of the rest of them do, they all drop out or whatever, and everyone stops talking, and then 3 years later, Francis sends everyone suicide notes, but he ends up surviving his attempt, and him, Richard, and Camilla meet up and, like, have very awkward conversations. We find out that Charles ran away with this older woman and they live in Texas now together for some reason. Francis ends up marrying a woman because his grandfather found out he was gay and said, if you don't marry a woman right now, I'm going to cut you out of my will. And so he's like, I want my money, so I'm going to marry a woman. So he's miserable. Richard proposes to Camilla for some reason, and she's like, I can't, I'm still in love with Henry. And then Richard's like, yeah, I also love him. And then they never see each other again. It's just, it's so dumb. I hated this book. It was really bad. I feel bad saying that, but like, I really had a bad time. According to Libby, I read this book over the course of 13 hours and 40 something minutes, and I would say that is a waste of 13 hours of my life. I'll leave the 40 something minutes alone. Like, there were some things here maybe that were fine. That's I'll give it the 40 something minutes of not wasting my time, but 13 hours that I could have done literally anything else with my life. But instead I read this book. It's fine. I am going to edit this vlog probably tomorrow just to be done with it and then forget about this book entirely. Anyway, our next pick for the book club, in case you were wondering, is The Maidens by Alex Michaelides. That is our pick for November and December, so I will be reading it at some point during those 2 months and doing a vlog like this one where I give you all of the spoilers and my deepest, darkest thoughts about it. But we have now, thankfully, come to the end of this one. If you've enjoyed this video and my misery, be sure to give me a big thumbs up. You can subscribe to my channel for more content, and that way I will see you guys in the next one. Bye, everyone.